In the air, Sriram takes it. India win.
He'll come back for the second. India have won the test match. India have won the series.
They're going to get back for two. India at home. Lords goes wild.
Hello and welcome to an absolute random episode of 81 All Out podcast. This has come about as a result of the last podcast that we did as part of our memory series on the 97 India tour of West Indies. Some of the feedback that we got post the episode focused a lot more on cricket coverage around that time, not just the West Indies series, the one before, the South Africa series as well. A lot of people chipped in with very obscure, random memories, not necessarily iconic, lasting memories. So you're basically taking off from there, and we have three other people joining me today to talk about fairly random, obscure memories of their cricket watching lives. Not necessarily iconic, in fact, necessarily not iconic, odd, mundane ones. So let me introduce you the crew for the pod today. There's Bala from Chennai, Balakumar. Hi, Bala.
Hi.
And there's Sriram Venkateswaran from Twitter, Sriram140 on Twitter. Hi, Sriram.
Hey, Mahesh.
Great to hear your voice for the first time. And fellow 81 All Out crew regular, Sidri is also here. Hi, Sidri.
Hey, Mahesh. Good to be here.
Thanks, everyone. All right, let's start with the senior first. Bala, why don't you get started?
Okay. See, let me start with an opener himself, Gavaskar. See, we all have a lot of memories and images of Gavaskar. The one I'm trying to think about Gavaskar is with a moustache. This is one of the rare, he's mostly clean shaven. This was one of the rare occasions where he sported a moustache, not just a short moustache. It was a Zapata type. It's a long one. It's one of those things, it happened in 1984. If I remember, it was during the first Asia Cup. It happened in UAE. The first Asia Cup happened in UAE, and only 3 teams were participating. India won the tournament. Those things are just background details. Because it's not a great. I don't actually remember much of the scores or what really happened in those. I just remember Gavaskar with a moustache, and as it happened, couple of years ago, Gavaskar recalled that particular tournament and talked about that moustache, why he sported a moustache during the tournament. And his explanation was a bit curious. In the sense, he said that he wanted to sleep a bit longer than it was possible. So he wanted to save time. To save time, he grew a moustache. Otherwise, he would have had to get up early and have a shave. He is clean shaven, and a shave takes probably not more than 5 or 10 minutes, but he specifically said that he wanted to wanted to sleep longer so that he sported a moustache. I really don't know whether that explanation nearly 30 years after, more than 30 years later, whether it is true or he was just being tongue-in-cheek. Because I do remember in 1984, there was a particular ad of Dinesh shootings, for which he was a brand ambassador at the time. He sported a moustache for that. It was one of the rare, you can still find it on the internet. It's still available in the images section of, if you just randomly search for it, you can find it. It's interesting. Because Gavaskar, even in his advertisements for Palmolive and other stuff, he never sported a moustache, but for this, he sported a moustache, and it was really good on him. As a child, as an youngster, I wanted him to have a moustache. Coming from Tamil Nadu, we always wanted our heroes to have a moustache. He didn't. Most of the Kapildev had it, but Gavaskar didn't have it. But Gavaskar also has a strange connection with the hair and hair, because he was one of the few batsmen who has had a small haircut on the cricketing field. This is a strange incident that goes back to 1974, where he had a small lock of hair cut by Dickie Bird during 1974 series. He scored a century apparently. He writes about that in Sunny Days. It's an interesting, one of the few batsmen who has had his hair cut, and umpires in those days used to carry a lot of stuff in their coat pockets, and scissors was one of the things, and Dickie Bird performed the barber duties for him. See, Gavaskar had this impish things. See, I think it was after this 1984 not 1984. After we also won the Australasia Cup in 1985, and Gavaskar came back from Sharjah. He was sporting a bandage on his head. And at that time, 1985, there was a lot of controversy and there was general talk that Gavaskar and Kapil Dev were not in talking terms and there was constant bickering and fighting between these two. And after the team landed from Sharjah, and this guy was sporting a bandage, and there was a typical small press conference of sorts. And after everything was over, Gavaskar asked the reporters, "Why did you not ask me about this bandage?" Okay. Immediately, reporters asked him, "What was it all about?" Gavaskar, typically in his typical side, "I just had a fight with Kapil Dev." That was amazing. It was a joke on himself because the entire press was writing against him because Kapil Dev was the real hero at that time because Gavaskar was coming towards the end of his career and generally the Bombay lobby was not really liked by a lot of people. But to still take a joke on himself was great, and Gavaskar did that. That was a strange thing. These are the things I remember about. Offbeat things that whether you can call it as odd, mundane stuff, but these things really talk a lot about Gavaskar's impish personality.
I just did a Google Images search for the Asia Cup for Gavaskar 1984, and I got that image. And,
great.
There is Vensarkar and Shastri and Gavaskar all are holding the trophy. And there is also a team photo where the whole team is there, and almost everyone apart from Gavaskar seems to have the traditional moustache, which is not that long. This is but Gavaskar is almost a handlebar going below.
Exactly, Zapata moustache. Yeah, that's right.
Zapata, amazing. I've never seen him seen this photo before, and I didn't follow the tournament. So yeah, this is quite a memory.
Interesting. How many of you remember Dravid with a moustache?
Oh yeah, definitely. I remember.
I don't know if did he sport a moustache after that? Like that was in Singapore when he made his debut. When he made his test debut, at Lord's, I'm sure he would have given Dravid. He would have probably shaved and gone because it's Lord's and it's a test debut. And I guess since then he's just stuck to that.
I don't think he sported one after that, unless it was in some, just for a brief periods, which I don't remember. But this was on the field. This is the most striking memory for me, the first series that he played.
Singapore at Padang, which is a stone's throw from my office.
Yeah.
I look at it every day.
Talk of humble brag.
Please. Padang is the last thing I should be humble bragging about. You guys are staying within, 5-10 kilometers to Chepauk, which is an iconic ground.
Had you been in Padang in 1996, you might have actually worried that some Jayasurya 6 will come and break the glass in your office or something.
Possible. Good. Moving on. How about you, Sriram?
Hey, so I think, like Bala said, I'll start off in another opener about Sachin, but this is about a day when he didn't open actually. So this was in the first game of the Wills series in '94 against the West Indies, and I happened to be at Chepauk. So what had happened was Tendulkar got his first 100 against Australia in the Singer World Series, and then his scores in the next three innings were 0, 0, and 0. And the first one came against Sri Lanka in the final of the same Singer series, and then West Indies came to India a month later. And in the first two ODIs, he scored 0. And there was some chatter, I remember, about Tendulkar's form, where he would bat, and so on. And this was a day where, you would expect, that Tendulkar might come down at number 4 or something. But very strangely, he came out to bat that day at number 3, which was very unusual for him because I think he's only done it like 10 times in his entire career or something like that. Some of it, during when Ganguly wanted to open, and at other points when, Dravid and Chappell wanted him to move down the order and so on. But I don't know what happened that day, whether it was a move that, he requested or whether Azhar and Wadekar sort of had him move down the order. Anyway, so I remember at the ground, so you saw Prabhakar and Sidhu open, and then you expected, okay, fine, Tendulkar would come at 4, maybe Kambli at 3 or something. And you saw suddenly Sachin walking out at number 3. He made a very scratchy 8 that day. I really don't remember much about that innings. It's not much to speak about. What I remember is that, the next game again, he was back to opening. And he scored 100 where he basically played himself back into form through that innings. And the funny thing was, those days we had these strange schedules, right? So you had the 2 bilateral ODIs of the West Indies, that India played against West Indies, and then you played the entire Wills Series Cup. And then you came back and played 3 more bilateral ODIs. And in those 3 ODIs, he had played himself into such good form that, he basically became the man of the series at the end of that entire series. So this was, something that sticks out, it's sort of the first game that I ever watched. And just to see him bat at number 3 was sort of very odd and something that very, very rarely happened, I think, over his career.
I'm curious about what was the crowd reaction after the first wicket, as Rahul Bhattacharya wrote about that traitorous roar when the second wicket for India falls in a test match. I mean, the point is there was no context for a traitorous roar. Nobody would have expected Sachin to come. So I'm just curious how the crowd reacted that day.
That's a great question. Actually, unfortunately, I guess it happened so long ago that I don't remember what was the crowd reaction at that point in time. But it just felt strange to just see him, come out at 3, basically.
What about you, Sidvi?
So I will go with another opener, this time a makeshift opener. And this is like about Nayan Mongia in the Mumbai test of 2001, that famous series, the test that India lost really badly. And this was Mongia's last series, pretty much. He just played the first 2 tests and never played after that. And this is like, he walks in wearing a yellow helmet. I mean, first of all, Nayan Mongia and his history, you expect that guy to do some weird things, but this was even beyond what I had, expected in my head. Suddenly he walks in, and that yellow, like, it was like I'm sure you guys probably even remember it. The color of that yellow.
Yes.
Like canary yellow or something. I was like, where did this guy pick this up from? What is this? Is this even available? How does he get something?
It's very neon yellow. Yeah, I do remember.
Yeah, and I mean, there were the bizarre, what built up on the bizarre was that he basically, this was in the second innings after India had conceded a big lead, and this was the end of the day when he came in as a night watchman. So he came in before Sachin in the second innings in that
second innings
end of the day, and then he got hit on the hand. I don't remember which bowler it was. He got hit, and then he had to retire hurt. He came in night watchman, and then there were like 1 over remaining. He retired hurt. So Sachin walked in with some 4 or 5 balls remaining in the day because Nayan Mongia came in with a yellow helmet and retired hurt when he was supposed to be a night watchman. I mean, I don't blame the guy for getting hurt and retiring hurt. That's all fair enough. But it just added up into a bizarre situation. And then the next morning, he actually came back to bat because he was okay. And then after India were losing wickets, so he came back to bat and he batted like there was no tomorrow. India, he basically batted like India needed like 10 and over or something, just wildly swishing. And then he got out. And he got out. This is the most bizarre part of all the bizarre parts. He got out. He basically walked off, even though nobody appealed. Nobody appealed for the dismissal. And he walked off.
I thought that happened in Calcutta. I remember that phase of play distinctly where I think Manjrekar was the commentator and he kind of, talked about it quite a bit.
No, it was in Mumbai. I'm very sure it was Mumbai. I even went and checked. When I thought I'm messing it up. I thought all this couldn't have happened in the same match, but it did. And I think it was pretty sure it was a caught behind. Nobody
it was a Damon coming ball and caught behind, and there was no edge.
There's no edge. Nobody appealed, and it was almost like everyone was trying to get back to the next ball, and this guy is walking off.
Sounds fishy also, in a sense.
It does, but the thing with
Manjrekar brings that up in commentary that it sounds fishy.
It did, and then later, when I was searching about it, I've also found a Rahul Bhattacharya piece on Mongia. This was from his cricket, around that time. And apparently, either in a press conference or either Rahul himself interviewed him, he asked him about the yellow helmet. And Mongia said that there were 2 blue helmets and both were too big for him. So, and then he had this yellow helmet, which I guess he was wearing in Ranji or wherever he was playing. And then he asked John Wright that, hey, I have these 2 blue big helmets. Can I use the yellow helmet? And John Wright said that, yeah, you have to use the one that's best for you and all that. So, and then he justified also all the other stuff, like, saying the physio felt that he had to come off because of the injury. And then that he said nobody's upset with the way I approached my innings the next day and all that. And he made it appear like it was all very normal, which it perhaps was. But with Mongia, it's like just seems so out of the world.
So the India-West Indies game that I spoke about was literally 1 week before Kanpur. So just to connect to Mongia. So it was on a Sunday and the next Sunday was Kanpur. So yeah.
Yeah, and the thing with Mongia and his justifications is that, for so long in my life, I'd cursed him for that shot he played in Chennai against Pakistan, getting out after him and Sachin had put on that partnership. And then recently, earlier this year, when I did a piece on that test and I spoke to him, he said that, he had a temperature, 102 or 103 degrees temperature, and that's why he went in walking with a sweater. And he really was struggling most of the time and all that. And I actually felt a bit bad that I had cursed him for so many years. And this has actually happened. And then somebody pointed it to me that why, if this was the case, why wasn't it mentioned anywhere for 20 years? And I thought, yeah, that's also true. Why didn't it come out earlier?
But you can see the sweater in the TV footage.
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying nowhere is it mentioned that guy had high fever and high temperature and all that. Maybe it was mentioned in some press which I don't have access to, but it's not widely known.
But it's fair to say that he must have had a fever to wear sweater in Chennai.
That's one way. That's the logical way of looking at it.
Excellent. So now I'll go with. I don't have an opener connection directly, but I'm going to pick up a very indirect connection to an opener. So this event happened when Saeed Anwar was batting. So the context is we had just moved to Delhi, and for some strange emergency reason, my parents had to kind of go back to Chennai, and we were put up in a relative's place, not even like a very close relative. So we were there for a week or so, and the whole family was cricket crazy, the husband, wife, and the 2 kids. So we were watching this Pakistan-England series, which followed immediately after the India tour of England in 1996. The first test at Lord's. And dinner time, eating and watching, and then all of a sudden there was this lady streaker who ran around the ground, and it all went. It was quite bizarre because nobody knew how to react. I was in a new place, and then this the head of the family who was watching was like, his wife was in the kitchen. For some reason, he screamed and said, "Hey, Rama, come here, watch what's happening." I'm like, why is he screaming? It's not some entertainment. And him, his wife, the 2 kids, and me and my brother was also there, if I remember right. And I didn't know, should I be looking at the TV? Should I be looking at them? Should I be looking away? I had no idea. And also, I guess, I don't remember watching male or female, any streaker come onto the ground before that, at least on live TV. So for me, I didn't even understand how it affects the players. And I remember Mark Elam walking back to his mark, smiling sheepishly, and Atherton in the slips, smiling wildly. And Anwar, I don't know who was the partner, maybe Ijaz, walking to Ijaz as if nothing happened. The 2 guys are talking pure cricket, and the rest of the ground is thinking about something else. It was quite a bizarre thing. It took me a while to kind of go back to that home and feel normal.
When I think back, I don't think I've seen a streaking incident on a live telecast, because somehow television is quick enough to avoid that. You either see it after the innings, somebody being escorted out, or you show the crowd's reaction. Generally, live telecast, producers are smart enough to avoid it. That's perhaps why you remember it so distinctly.
So there's most of these, at least in these days, most of the production crew, they have one cameraman allotted to do the color footage. And so he's the guy who, will show you the crowd footage. He'll show you all the other footage. And one of the instructions that he's given, apparently, like one of them told me, is that the moment you have a streaker-like situation, you just alert everyone and we'll make sure that your camera is not on at all. It'll just be off.
Okay. Okay.
So
Yeah.
that was interesting.
So one thing I remember during Wimbledon, I don't know if you guys remember, I think this was, like long ago, there where two players are standing, I think Krajicek and Maliwai Washington or something, and there's a streaker just runs by,
Before the match.
Yeah, before the match.
This was when they were tossing, in fact.
Yeah, tossing or something like that. Yeah.
I remember that, yeah.
Back to Bala again.
Okay. Yeah, Greg Matthews' tie test. I thought I'll go back to the tie test itself because it was perhaps the most acrimonious day of cricket I have watched. I've never seen things that have happened on that day getting repeated anywhere else at any other point of time. And if it had happened any other time later, surely heads would have rolled, metaphorically speaking. Because a lot of things were said, a lot of things were done. And one of the things that was done on the field, Tim Zoehrer, bending his back, showing his bum to Chetan Sharma. Because I've never seen anything remotely even close to that after that. We have seen we generally say cricket has gotten worse, behavior has deteriorated, stuff like that. But on that particular day, the things that had happened was, it's impossible. See, what had happened was, the match, of course, everyone remembers everything about that match, and it was all through the day, it was poised, all through the day, it was on a knife's edge. And because a great declaration and a greater thing from India was to go after the target with, around 4 runs per over, if not more. So it was a great match. But this particular incident was with Ravi Shastri and Chetan Sharma batting. This was, I think, the bowler was Greg Matthews. And it was Chetan Sharma, and it was a typical off-spinner's delivery, pitched on middle and leg. It went down the leg side. Chetan Sharma tried to stretch himself. And Tim Zoehrer Chetan Sharma couldn't connect, and Tim Zoehrer collected it and whipped off the bails, and immediately ran towards the bowler and started celebrating. But the leg umpire didn't give that out. The leg umpire was Dara Dhotiwala. Tim Zoehrer flew into a rage. He threw the ball down. That in itself was huge. And he said a lot of things towards the umpire, which, even though we couldn't hear, was certainly no paper could even publish. And when he came back to his position, there were words exchanged between Chetan Sharma and Tim Zoehrer. Chetan Sharma wagged his finger at Tim Zoehrer. At some point, he also showed something with his bat. Chetan Sharma is no saint. Apparently, he said something to the effect, we can only guess, that he showed his bat handle and he wanted to show it up Tim Zoehrer's, which plays you all know. So immediately what Tim Zoehrer did was to immediately turn his back and bend down and show the particular spot where Chetan Sharma wanted to show the bat up. And it was all show, and we were watching it on Doordarshan. And it was, it was unbelievable because Doordarshan, you won't even show boys and girls sitting together in a normal telecast in those days in 1986. And this was one of the most obscene gestures that was imaginable. And it was being shown live on television. And I don't remember the commentary, but I think Kishore Bhimani was one of the commentators. Tim Zoehrer is angry. That was what he summed up. He was doing the vilest of things, but Kishore Bhimani was summing it up as he was being angry. It was much worse than that. But all through that match, last day, Chetan Sharma, Chandrakant Pandit almost came to blows with the Australian cricketers. Ravi Shastri had a lot to say for the Australian cricketers. And you know what the Australian cricketers were saying and doing. It was one of the most amazing days of cricket. But because of that result, everything was watered down. Because other reactions, we all recollect almost with a certain amount of fondness that those incidents would not have got otherwise, if not for that result. It was an impossible result to think of. So that result kind of airbrushed all those nasty things said and done on that field.
Just as a aside, Tim Zoehrer is, I think, one of the great characters to have
Exactly.
played cricket. And I happen to, I mean, it's not available anywhere now, but if you can somehow get hold of it, he wrote one book in 1995 called The Gloves Are Off. And I don't think any cricketer anywhere at any time has written a more scathing, outrageously open book. I mean, he just goes after everyone. There is, I guess he wrote it out of rage after when he was dropped from the Western Australia team. And he just, almost he's like, he has a bat in his hand and he's just going around whacking everyone around. Bob Simpson, everyone, Damien Martin, and him had Western Australia history. And then Bob Simpson, who basically was responsible for getting him out of the Australian team, and everyone. And then there are all these casual jibes here and there. Apparently, some match he's talking about where Madan Lal, somebody bowled a bouncer to Madan Lal, and Madan Lal sort of wasn't able to handle it. And then casually he puts in a line after the description. There's casually one line that says, "Such a wimp." And the book is full of such stuff. And I remember back when I think I picked it up in Australia, and then I came and I read it, and I was so thrown by it that I actually gave it to people and said, read this book. And a few others in Cricinfo read it, and to this day, there are guys who will quote lines from there and remember it because it is so outrageous. So if anyone gets hold of it, please read it.
Probably it has got to do with wicket keepers with names starting with Z, because Pakistan's wicketkeeper Zulkarnain Haider also had a lot of spicy things to say of his own teammates. He also flew. No, he came from London, no, or he flew to London, fearing for his safety or something like that. Happened, no?
Yeah, he ran away. Yeah, correct.
Ran away.
In fact, when I went to the same Roger Page bookstore in Melbourne, I did pick it up. He had a few copies left, and I know it was out of print anywhere else. So I did pick it up, but I haven't read it yet.
Oh. You have to. If you start, you won't. I'm sure you won't put down before it finishes.
So on a tangential note, so I think there was this game. I mean, I didn't watch this game, but I've read about it where I think Merv Hughes was bowling to Hansi Cronje and he was hitting him all over the place. And after one such hit, I think Merv Hughes went and again pointed his bum at Cronje and let out a fart and said, "Now try hitting that for 6."
Yeah, exactly.
The next one that I want to talk about is this. Since this is a season for sort of the minute details of cricket laws, I'll talk about Law 28.6.1. So this was an incident from an India-Sri Lanka test in '97. It was one of those boring tests, but anyway, so Sri Lanka were set 333 on the last day, and what happened was Aravinda was batting, and Aravinda was in that period was batting like a king, right? So I don't think there was any danger of India losing the test, but I think if Aravinda batted, you never knew, and they would definitely drop. And then Srinath bowled the ball, and Aravinda pulled the ball, and he was a fantastic puller, right? But then he was completely shocked to find that the ball had gone straight to a fielder who he didn't even think was there. And this was Chauhan, right? And he started protesting, and I didn't really understand what he was protesting about. And what he was saying was that the fielder had actually moved backwards. And until then, I didn't know that there was, such a law that, if you move backwards, then the ball is a dead ball. He started moving after Srinath bowled the ball, after Srinath started running in. And finally, it looked like umpire Buckner. So I went back and checked Wisden, and it looked like it was Buckner, India's favorite umpire, who actually said that no, Chauhan had actually moved back before Srinath actually started running in, and finally he was given out. I remember this was sort of endlessly debated on TV, and that was the first time I actually got to know that there was even such a law that you could only move forwards and not sort of backwards.
I remember that dismissal quite well, and in fact, on replay, it is clearly shown that he starts moving while Srinath is running in.
Is that so? I actually don't have a memory of the dismissal. So you think he was actually not out? I mean,
technically, as far as my memory goes, I think he was not out because Chauhan walks back. And at that time, I didn't know. Subsequently, after all the debate, I got to know that this is not out. But at that time, I'm like, what is he complaining about? And there was this rage against Aravinda for what he did in '96, right? So, I mean, as much as you could enjoy seeing him bat, it was like, what the fuck is he complaining about? He's won everything he has to win. He's already the king in the world. What is he complaining about? Move on, man.
So I remember that, what I remember is that De Silva's reaction, he was absolutely furious. And he pointed out with his bat, he was pointing to Chauhan and, and I remember the commentators also. I think Boycott was one of the commentators.
Yeah, Boycott was, yeah.
And Boycott, in fact, even brought up some county game from his playing days where such a thing had happened and all that. So, yeah, it was debated for quite a long period of time.
Yeah, but you remember seeing the replay? Because on the replay, I remember seeing him walk while Srinath is running in.
Yeah, I think they did sort of agree that it was a mistake on the umpire's part, that he should have seen the...
I guess we have one thing Buckner to thank Buckner for.
Well, we also have...
MS Dhoni, the MS
Dhoni's... my next memory is about another day where a lot happened. This was the Faisalabad test between England and Pakistan in 2005. Basically, after England won the famous Ashes, they went to Pakistan for a fantastic series. It was just a 3-match series, but the tests were full of incident and lots of twists and turns. England lost 2-0, but the first test was extremely close and it could have, the second match was drawn. So the series could have gone either way. But there was the second day of the Faisalabad test. And again, this is another case where I thought these things happened on different days, but it turned out it happened on the same day. First, Inzamam got into that run out with Harmison, which you'll find on YouTube. I mean, basically, he pushes the ball back to Harmison. Harmison picks it up and throws the stumps down. And Inzi is taking evasive action, and so he lifts up his leg. The ball goes under and hits the stumps. So at the point of time when the ball hits the stumps, Inzi is out of the crease. I mean, Inzi's one leg is in the air and the other leg is out of the crease. But according to the law, he's not out because his leg had previously been within the crease. So the law stated that he was not out. But so that became a big controversy. And it also, now, I mean, people look at it for comedy value and say that, oh, see the ways in which Inzi used to get run out. He even went to an extent to get run out when he pushed the ball back and all, but technically it wasn't out. And the law, the umpire made a mistake. The third umpire made a mistake. So that was one. And in the same day, then towards the end of the day, there was a gas canister, that gas cylinder that was in that giant drinks trolley that they used to have back then. I mean, they used to have different shapes of drinks trolleys, right? I think this one was shaped in the form of a bottle, maybe even in a Coca-Cola style bottle, and a gas cylinder blew off, and that was a huge sound. I mean, this was like and in a stadium, it was quite a scare. And I still remember Ramiz Raja on air. He was like on air at the time, and then this huge sound goes off, and he just suddenly goes, "And that's a bomb."
Are you serious? I don't remember it at all.
Yeah, he just suddenly, I mean, he just felt the need to announce to the whole world that there's a bomb that's gone off. That's a bomb. And I mean, it was there was people thinking that there's something serious happened, but then they realized that after about 5-10 minutes, they realized that this gas cylinder has gone off, and luckily no one's injured, and it's just a sort of incident. But then play was stopped for about 10-15 minutes because of all that. And the players, in fact, they were also panicking and many were running away. But then the umpires told them, don't run out. I mean, if there's a bomb somewhere there, ideally you should be in the middle of the field. And so there was a bit of panic. And in that panic, the great Shahid Afridi, he just walks up casually to the middle of the pitch and he does that little pirouette and a dance in the pitch to dig it up. And there is a YouTube video of that. And it's just bizarre. I mean, he's looking around. Everyone is in a state of panic. This guy walks to the pitch. He's on a good length area. He turns around to make sure that nobody's watching. And then he just quickly does a pirouette and then starts doing a bowling action. He's almost as if he's practicing his bowling action right in the middle of the pitch. So, and the cameras caught it. And then I think the England players got to know about it, either because it was I don't know if there was a giant screen or what, but they got to know about it. And then KP was furious. And when he was walking back, KP was just like, he just giving it all out to Afridi. And what struck me about the whole thing was that, Ian Botham and Sanjay Manjrekar were analyzing this at the end of the day's play. They spent hardly a minute or a minute and a half talking about this. And they sort of brushed it aside as a silly thing. I mean, of course, they said Afridi shouldn't have done it and all that. But I'm just imagining if that had happened today, given the context and given everything, first of all, if that bomb scare had happened, and secondly, if this had happened, I think the people would have called for 1-year ban for Afridi, right?
No, the tour would have been called off immediately for either of the reasons.
I actually remember KP pointing his bat at Afridi and saying, you know what, you've been caught on camera or something like that, as he was walking off.
He also mimed what Afridi did. He turned around himself to tell Afridi that, hey, people saw what you did. And then Afridi did get punished for it. I think he probably got a match ban or something for it. But the whole thing was treated like, a small thing that happened in the day. Maybe because the bomb scare was the bigger event of the day. But even then, it wasn't, people didn't have their knives out for him or anything like that.
So this happened in the Faisalabad test, which was the third test between South Africa and Pakistan. It was that Ali Naqvi, Azhar Mahmood debut series. And I think it was one of those weekdays. For some reason, I didn't feel like going to school, so I bunked school and I was sitting at home and watching alone. And Pakistan were bowling beautifully, and Mushtaq was bowling. I mean, he was in the form of his life in that phase. He was bowling quite beautifully, and he bowls this flipper to Simcox, who was resurrecting the innings from a collapse. And the ball goes through, like it beats the bat, it beats everything, and it goes through. And it somehow manages to squeeze between off stump and middle stump without disturbing the stumps or the bail. I had never seen anything like it, which itself was exciting enough. But the problem for me was that I can't be jumping around talking about it because there's nobody around. And I guess I must have faked some sort of sickness to stay at home. So I can't be like seen jumping around by my parents as well, by my mom, for instance. So I had to hold this excitement till my brother comes back from school. And he has to believe me when I say this, right? I mean, it sounds so ridiculous, right? How can a ball go through between off stump and middle stump without disturbing the stump or the bail? I have never heard of such a thing happening in cricket. Do you guys remember that at all?
Yeah, I think there's a YouTube video of that. I remember seeing that too. I don't know if it was on YouTube or highlights or something like that. Yeah, but I distinctly remember that. Yeah.
Rob Linda has that short clip of just that ball, which is like almost like a GIF on YouTube.
I see.
Yeah, I remember clearly. I remember it when it happened. I don't know if I saw it live or if I saw it later in the day, but they showed that ball quite often. I remember that evening and even later in the series.
I was just checking the scorecard of that match. I mean, what bowling lineup, man! There was Wasim Wakar, Azhar Mahmood, Mushtaq, and Saklain. I didn't know Saklain had already started playing then.
See, since we talked of Tim Zoehrer, and since Sidby brought up Tim Zoehrer having a go at his own teammates, I thought I'll bring up Richard Blakey. He's also a wicketkeeper. I mean, you guys will certainly remember him from the 1992-93 series at England, when England visited India. A disastrous series for them. I mean, the term brown wash, if it was the right term, I don't know, was used for the first time ever. I mean, Richard Blakey was the surprise wicketkeeper, second wicketkeeper. Alex Stewart was the main wicketkeeper. Richard Blakey was picked over, I think, Russell. Blakey is a Yorkshire man. You hardly heard about him before that, and as it happened after that also. I mean, he was one of the poor wicketkeepers who really had it from his own teammate. This was not telecast, it was written about. This guy, Richard Blakey, was apparently a very good wicketkeeper because his record only in the domestic cricket was great, certainly great after that. It's a pretty solid keeper, but it was a horrible tour for almost everybody in the English camp. And Richard Blakey, didn't get going at all. This was one of those side matches against rest of India. He missed a stumping of Sachin Tendulkar, and Phil Tufnell was bowling, and this is, I mean, having missed Sachin Tendulkar, Phil Tufnell had a go at him like anything. That was, I mean, this was unheard of. I don't know what he said, but Alex Stewart later said in one of his interviews, you will not say this even to your opposing players. That's what Phil Tufnell had said of Richard Blakey, and he got the cap from the umpire and kicked it, and he was fined. I think he was fined around 500 pounds or something. He was supposed to be a decent bat also. He had only 7 runs. And out of, he had 2 ducks, 6 runs and 1 run. And he was out to Anil Kumble thrice. I mean, I still remember, I think it was Martin Johnson, he writing something to the effect that what is the difference between the Madame Tussauds wax studio of, wax image of Richard Blakey and Richard Blakey. The wax image had a better footwork.
Classic MJ.
MJ, exactly. It was the whole tour was classic MJ stuff, because a lot of things went wrong for the English team, because Graham Gooch was going through a horrible marriage, and right on the first day of the tour, he had to announce to the English press that his marriage had fallen apart. Then he had his famous tiger prawn, this thing that he had in a Chennai hotel, because of which he couldn't play. And there was Calcutta smog, and they had a lot of difficulty. There was an Indian Airlines strike, so they couldn't get the flights. They had to travel in trains to the smaller cricket venues, and when they had to take a flight, it was driven by Uzbekistan pilots, because Indian Airlines had brought in pilots from Uzbekistan to tide over the crisis of the strike. So a lot of incidents had happened all through the tour, and the English press, when it comes to gallows humor, English press it's great in that sense, and they had a real roaring time.
Actually, my next incident is from that series and that test. Or from the Chennai test too over there. So where Mike Gatting drops a catch.
Sitter, it was.
Yeah, it is probably the simplest catch that I've seen ever.
Exactly,
and it's so simple that the umpire actually starts putting his hand up. Nobody has appealed, nothing has happened, the ball is in the air, and this umpire, so Rob Smythe, whom Sidby interviewed some time back, he has written about this, and the umpire is R.S. Rathore or someone like that, and then he puts up his hand, right? And Mike Gatting drops the ball, and his hands are like completely stretched. His hands are like stretched out, his mouth is gaping open, like as though you've seen a ghost or something, right? I like, how can I drop this kind of images? And and then the umpire hastily puts his hand down, right? And then even more, nobody can believe what has happened over there. And Rob Smythe writes about that, saying that, this is sort of a weird collision of ghosts for Gatting from the subcontinent, which is basically, he reverse swept Alan Border and got out. And then a hastily raised finger, which was Shakur Rana. And then the third was a drop catch in a prior Ashes, right? So he dropped, so Alan Border goes down the track, and then he sort of flicks Phil Edmonds. And then Gatting sort of throws up the ball prematurely, and again drops some complete sitter. So that tour was a complete horror for England on all fronts. And this catch is something that I can't get out of my head. They talk about like basketball players' hang time. I think this ball had the most hang time of any ball that I've seen, and he somehow still managed to drop it.
In fact, that robs my piece. This is the lead image of that piece.
Oh, this is the lead image of that piece.
Yeah, it's almost like a perfect encapsulation of the whole England tour. But interestingly, in that Rob Smythe piece too, Bala, you'd be interested to know that when he talks about Richard Blakey and the horror tour, but he says on the flight back home, he sat next to Phil Tufnell. And
exactly.
Richard Blakey kept saying effing Anil Kumble because getting out to
exactly,
Anil Kumble's slipper.
Thrice he got out to Kumble thrice in that series.
Yeah, so
he had 4 innings.
Yeah. So even after Tufnell had lashed out, they still sat next to each other on the flight.
Yeah. That happens.
Yeah, but the thing with that tour also is that, I think it's probably in that piece too. Keith Fletcher was the manager of that England team, and he went to South Africa when India were there in the previous series. And then he apparently told the British press that I watched Kumble Bowl in all the tests.
He doesn't turn a centimeter or something. He said something to that effect.
He didn't turn a single ball.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And the best part was, I think in Calcutta on a turning track, they picked like 4 pacemen or something, right? The first, or something like that. And they picked like Ian Salisbury, who was, I think, their reserve spinner instead of, they made all kinds of strange decisions on that tour. And
I think Peter Taylor was their left arm seamer they picked in that test. And that was, of course, Azhar's big moment where he was on the verge of losing his captaincy, and then he comes and hits that 100, and then things go uphill from there. Upswing. There's an upswing. Okay, so my next moment is I can't even place which game it was or when it happened. I'm pretty sure it happened between 97 and 99, because that was when I was in I was doing my 11th and 12th, and I remember a friend of mine and me, like, we laughed about this for almost half a day. I mean, the day after it happened. This was I don't know which match, but this Pakistan were playing. Moin Khan was like the keeper. Salim Malik was in the team. Ijaz. And that late 90s Pakistan team. And I think it might have been a one-dayer, but my memory totally escapes me, and I haven't found any reference to it online. And there's this moment where between balls or between overs, and there's like the 3-4 Pakistanis gather around the cover region, and they're just having like a little conference. It seems like they are talking about tactics or strategies, but they're just there for a little while, and the stump mic is on, and Moin Khan, he's like urging the bowler, and he's like, okay, come on. Hello, guys, there's no party going on here. Come on. And that stuck in my head. And I went to school the next day, and I just asked my friend, who's also a big cricket fan, I said, did you see that match? Did you see what Moin Khan said? And he also had heard exactly the same thing. And we just laughed about it for half a day. We talked about it, and Moin Khan, and like, what a guy. Like, his own teammates are standing there and like, there's no party going on here. Come on.
But strange things happen in Pakistan, because apparently in the 1982 tour, when India toured to Pakistan, Mohinder Ahmed had an incident, because during one of those drinks intervals, the players were standing. Those days umpires were also given the drinks. There was a drinks trolley or something, because I don't remember seeing it. I read it. The umpires were also part of this kind of a huddle. One of the umpires coolly just walked in, the ball was lying around. He took it up and started shining it on his pants. Mohinder Ahmed couldn't believe it. What is this umpire doing? He asked me, he casually dropped it and said nothing and walked off. This umpire. He has written about it. I think it should be somewhere in the net. But the umpire casually picking up the ball and rubbing it on his shoulder for trousers. That should have been quite a sight.
Bizarre.
So I'm going to talk about a particular test between West Indies and Australia that happened in 2012. And the context here is that the context of the match itself is important. But the context personally for me was that this was a period where I had completely stopped watching IPL. I think after 2010, I just thought I should just not watch something that I don't think adds to the cricket ecosystem. So if I'm critical of it, why add to its eyeballs? So I stopped watching, and the next 2 years were painful, right? Everybody on Twitter is talking about something or the other. And the main connection with all these guys on Twitter, all of you for that matter, is through cricket. And for 2 months, I'm not part of any of the conversations. And the only solace for me was the West Indies series, right? There was always a home series going on with a depleted West Indies side while the rest of the teams are playing IPL here. And in that context, this test was happening. And this was a fairly soporific test on a fairly slow wicket. They were scoring at 2.2 runs and over throughout the test. And you know how the whole, judgment about test cricket dying starts. There's IPL going on here and test cricket is presenting in its worst form there, whatever. And Darren Sammy was the captain, and he was not pushing things towards a result either. He was letting things, trundle along. In fact, it looked like almost he was playing for a draw. Till Michael Clarke wanted to liven up things, and he had this 60 overs, 220 something to get kind of a declaration. One of those typical Clark declarations. And then Darren Sammy, who was the one supposedly killing Test cricket, promotes himself to number 3 after the fall of first wicket. And he comes and goes berserk. Like nobody thought this game will come alive. And he's scoring it 10 runs and over for not too long, for 3 or 4 overs. He hits 6 of Hilfenhaus and a couple of 4s of Watson. It's like the Test was pregnant with possibilities, right? It could go anywhere. And then I think bad light. The umpires give them bad light and ask Clark to bowl only spinners, and he says no, and they go off. But just for those brief 3-4 overs, I was excited that the whole of Twitter conversation will shift to this, but it didn't actually. So just that my excitement was there for 4 or 5 overs.
I have no memory of this Test. And I'm pretty sure I wasn't even watching the IPL. I don't know what I was doing.
I assume the rest of you must have been watching the IPL.
Yeah, I don't remember this Test either, actually.
No, I mean, I remember all the dirge, singing the dirge on Twitter. Oh, this is where Test cricket is headed. There is IPL competing, and you have a Test match going on 2 runs and over. Darren Sammy brings it alive. And
Which year was this, sorry?
2012. It was a Trinidad Test. I think second Test, if I'm not wrong. Yeah.
I think I'll go back to 2008. It's the Asia Cup. In fact, I don't remember much of the Asia Cup itself, that particular edition of the Asia Cup. It was between Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. I mean, I'd gone out and come back home, and I just switched on the TV, and Bangladesh was batting. I don't remember the match situation or anything. Ashraful was batting. And Mohammad Ashraful, on his day, can be good. And I thought I'll watch for some time. And strangely, the wicketkeeper for Sri Lanka was Tilakratne Dilshan. I thought I'll watch it for some time. And it was a particular over of Nuwan Kulasekara. And Ashraful, a typical quicksilver batsman, but he can be either good or extremely bad. He had a wild slog, and I thought it was an edge, and because there was a distinct sound of it, and everybody thought it was an edge, and Tilak Ratne got it. It was a simple, straightforward catch, and everyone thought it was so simple. He threw it up. He caught it and threw it up and started celebrating. The umpire, as it happened, didn't give that out, and the camera was focused. Suddenly, the ball lands on his own head, Tilak Ratne Dilshan's own head. I mean, I never seen that happen. He threw it up and appealed. He was looking at the umpire, and after long, and it took ages for the ball to land back on his head. Commentators eventually lost it. They started laughing, and it was Star Sports telecast. And couple of replays later, they had also added kind of sound effects and a bird chirping, as if to say that Tilak Ratne's head was swooning with all that effect of the ball landing on his head. And even Tilak Ratne Dilshan could see the funny side of it. He had a wry smile. But I've never seen anything. Have you guys seen anything like that? Balls being thrown up and landing on the fielder's head?
No, I've seen Andrew Strauss throw the ball, and his shades come off, and the ball actually hits the shades, and the shades sort of just completely shatter.
And I've seen one catch where I don't remember which match, but I've seen Srikanth take a catch, like a more straightforward catch, then throw the ball up like at a really, with a lot of force. And then the ball goes back and earlier, and even now, I guess, the fielder who takes the catch and throws it up generally goes and catches it again. And Srikanth went and he took like a spectacular catch like the second time. Then I takes a straightforward catch the first time, throws the ball, and then takes a spectacular catch the second time. And then everyone, like the replays are showing the second catch as if that was the catch.
So my next one is about Pythagoras Theorem in cricket. So I've seen a couple of funny uses of Pythagoras Theorem. So the first one is this Marquardt 6 of Vettori in Perth, which was like a mighty 6 that he hit. So I was just looking up what had happened before, and in the 97 Ashes, he basically didn't do much, right? And then in the first set at Brisbane, apparently Parore sledged him. Again, he failed, and Parore sledged him, saying it's pretty tough out here, Mark, isn't it? Or something like that. And then he was batting in the second test at Perth, and then he hits this immense 6 onto the top of this Lily Marsh stand. And Ian Chappell and Tony Greig are on commentary, and they're sort of raving about this, right? That this is a huge hit. These days, you have all these parabolic arcs that come as soon as somebody hits a 6, and then it tells you, okay, how long it's gone, and so on. So on that, it was on the evening of some evening of the Perth test, and at that day, it's just everybody talks about how long it is and so on. And the next morning, there is this video of Tony Greig, and I remember watching this actually. Where he comes and there's a sort of a side-on view of the pitch, some let's say square leg or mid-wicket or something like that, and Tony Greig starts explaining that it's 90 meters to the side screen, and then it went a further 10 meters probably to the stand, and then there's about 35 meters on top, and then he starts saying, okay, now let's draw a straight line, and then we'll use Pythagoras theorem to estimate how long this ball has traveled. And he says, oh, it's 100 meters this way, 35 meters that way, and it's 106 meters. And that was funny, where, and it also shows us, how much graphics have come along, that, earlier you needed all this kind of, a day for people to sort of come back with how long sixes have traveled, but now you just get it sort of in an instant. The second incident that I remember is in the Chennai test. So, although I was in Chennai, I actually didn't watch the test at the ground. I watched it on TV. And if you guys remember, Azhar shoulders arms to Suckline. Ball hits him well outside the off stump, and he's well forward, but Steve Dunn gives him out. Right, and then Harsha Bhogle and Ramesh Raja are on commentary, and Harsha Bhogle starts telling him that, oh, the pitch is turning and there's considerable doubt, and then he starts again estimating, oh, the length of the pitch is this much, and Azhar has come forward this much, and he's also well outside the off stump and that distance so much, and the ball still has a considerable distance to travel, and again he estimates all this. I don't think Ramesh was buying a lot of it though from memory. It was quite funny to see these discussions on cricket where. Suddenly see math coming into cricket.
So that mark was 6 of Vettori. As you were talking about it, I went back to my pictures gallery, because I took a photo of some of the posters outside the cafe at the Vaka. They have these iconic moments of play at Vaka, and this is captured there for posterity with a photo of that 6 with some text. And also a parabola drawn to show how much it traveled. So they've gone from hypotenuse to parabola eventually. And they're guessing, I'm just reading it out from the text here. They're guessing that had the ball not been stopped, it would have gone on to travel 110 meters.
Oh, 110? Okay, I see. And Tony Greig actually makes the same point on commentary. I went back and watched, Rabalinda has helpfully uploaded it on YouTube. And so Tony Greig again says the same thing. Oh, if only there wasn't the stand, it would have gone much further, right? And maybe answer is 110, yeah.
Subsequently, apparently, in this poster, they say that Chris Gayle matched that feat 12 years later by hitting Nayan Mongia out of the ground.
Oh, out of the Vaka again?
Yeah, I have no memory of that at all.
No.
And talking about that Chennai test in '99, where this whole Azhar dismissal happened, there a couple of that test had so many things going on, but one of the other things that happened in that test was this can probably be my next entry anyway, was that on day 2 and day 3 there was probably a 5 to 10 minute gap in between play, because the sun was getting in the batsman's eyes. And Bala, you were at the test, so you'll remember.
I think Ijaz Ahmed had some problem. If I remember right, Ijaz Ahmed was one of those days. Ijaz Ahmed was at the crease. He had something, he couldn't watch it. Another day, I think it might have been Rahul Dravid. I don't remember.
The third day it was Tendulkar and Dravid at the crease, and the second day it was Ijaz Ahmed. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, so there was a real problem. I never come across such an incident before or after. Even in Chennai, I don't think it has happened before.
I think there was an India-New Zealand one day where the sun stopped play very recently, and so that people were. I was remembering that Chennai incident.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the architecture of the stadium was such that the sun, before it went down, it used to reach a spot which used to get directly in the bathroom.
Exactly. But it had never stopped play. Players got on with it, but during this test, it was stopped.
Oh, okay, interesting. Yeah, that was definitely interesting, because there was a gap, and the commentators were analyzing this for a while, and everyone was wondering. This was a pretty curious in case of sun stopping play.
Exactly.
Good. So I will take over from Chepauk, and I'm going to cheat a little bit here because this is not a mundane odd thing. This was a fairly iconic moment, but a very, very small micro moment that I guess is not recollected often. So this was during the course of Sehwag's 100 against South Africa at Chepauk. I've had the privilege of watching Sachin bat at Chepauk and score a couple of hundreds. I've seen Dravid bat well in Chepauk. I've seen Hayden bat well in Chepauk. But to watch Sehwag was so liberating. It was something else altogether. Even in that sort of frenetic pace of innings, there was one particular shot that stood out. So this is the last ball before tea. And Makaya Nitini is bowling from round the wicket and at full tilt. Sehwag just about clears his left leg. And he smashes it through the covers. The ball races away, which is all fine. The lasting image for me is the pace at which Sehwag just turned back, as if he doesn't even have to look at the ball. It's an insult to even look at the ball going to the boundary. He just turns back and walks very fast to the pavilion. It was almost like slapping the bowler. And I have tried to go back to this visual on clips and YouTube, whatever. I have seen the boundary, but I don't see any video of someone capturing how fast he turned back and left. And I used to think maybe I am exaggerating the impact because I don't remember watching it on TV, so I don't know how commentators described that shot. I don't think there was a Twitter at that time, so I don't know how other people reacted at that time. So, many years later, I had gone to England to watch a test in which I ran into a couple of journalists. One of them is a very, very cynical guy, you know. So he has no time for talking anything romantic about cricket. And we were drinking a few beers, and in the conversation, I keep bringing up one of those scores and one of those shots. And he says, "What do you want me to do? Do you want me to bring up my laptop from my room and cross-check with you? Can't you have a conversation without doing all these things?" I felt a little weird. So then I kind of, withdrew myself and didn't talk much. And for some reason, this 300 came up, and I said, this shot, the guy just lightened. The guy came to life here. For a guy who was so cynical about all those little details earlier, all of a sudden came to life, and he's like, man, that was a shot. That was telling the world that I am Sehwag and you have to live in my world. And he almost wrote a romantic piece around that shot. So that was the impact of the shot, which I felt many years later. So I'm guessing it resonates for a lot of you quite well.
Yeah, I was at that test. And in fact, I began my piece on Sehwag at the end of that day with this image. Because it was a really, a stark image of, and I think what made it even more spectacular was how he turned around. It wasn't, there was this match in that famous game in Chennai in 2004 against Australia, where at the end of day 4, he basically hits 4 boundaries and walks off, right?
Two boundaries, right? Yeah. Then the final
two boundaries. Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
He hits 2 boundaries, but then he walks off, and then Dean Jones on commentary is just going absolutely gaga, saying the confidence with which he's doing it and all. But I think in that instance, he walked straight. So it was something, but this case, he almost he had planned this to the micro minute. He knew that the ball was going for 4, and even before it reached the fence, in my memory, he just quickly turns around and starts walking. And everyone sort of in the press box, at least, everyone was quite shocked at that image.
Do you guys remember Bala, Sriram? Do you guys remember that image?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But I don't remember him turning back, but the particular shot I certainly remember.
Yeah, but I think the turning back was the clincher, and I can't find it on any videos so far. So I wasn't shown on TV the same way as we saw it there.
He was wearing this red bandana or something like that, right? At that time, was that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And talking about that, I'm just also connecting the two things, the bold and the 4. There was this a match in Calcutta where Azhar made that manic 100 against South Africa. And he hits one absolutely wristy 4 and through mid-wicket, and that Harsha Bhogle basically says that's bold. And that's how quick that those wrists were, that fooled Bhogle into thinking that he was bold. And maybe because of Azhar, the way he reacted after that, but the ball's actually got to mid-wicket for 4. So
yeah, that was a Klusener's of Klusener, right?
Yeah, of closeness ball. Yeah.
That was almost one of the shots was almost a helicopter shot. I mean, that kind of a wrist work. That was the first time I was seeing some kind of a shot like that in terms of wrist work.
Yeah, even from Azhar, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that Sehwag I definitely remember, and I don't recall too many other times when he did that. I mean, that Australia test is the closest I recall, but maybe there were other cases too.
So we'll finish with one last round.
I'll go back to 1987. Now that this is not exactly a test match. This was a MCC bicentenary celebration match between MCC and the rest of the world. This is the match that during which Gavaskar announced his retirement. When his personal score was at around 80 odd. I mean, he wanted to score a century at Lords, and he was pretty sure that he'll get it next day. So he announced it. But this is not about Gavaskar. I want to talk about. I mean, it's pretty well known, and it is also pretty well seen on the YouTube. This is about Roger Harper's run out of Graham Gooch. I mean, I didn't get to see it live. I don't think it was telecast live in India at all, this particular match. This was for the MCC bicentenary celebration. So it was not a regular test match or anything. But we got to see the cassettes. I mean, we got to see it in one of those news capsules. And later what happened was one of my friends' dad went to England on a official tour. We asked him to get a cassette of video cassette a year later. He got it, and that's how we got to see it really later. This is Roger Harper running out Graham Gooch. That kind of alacrity and that kind of a celerity in movement, I had never seen that, because Gooch was on a century. He was perhaps around 115 or 117, or I don't remember. This was a typical Roger Harper flattish off break. And he had earlier in that match itself, he had earlier taken a great catch to dismiss Greenwich. Greenwich was playing for the other team. So Roger Harper was turning up for the rest of the world. See, what Gooch was doing was, this ball was thrown up to him. He was coming down the wicket. Typical shot, because just steps down a bit and plays it back to the bowler. But it was a standard thing. Naturally, what most bowlers would have just collected it and walked back to their top of their mark. But what happened was, the moment he hit the ball, it came to him slightly fast. Harper just plucked it out and threw it back. And even Gooch, before he could realize, the stumps were behind him were gone. It was the most electric moment on a cricketing field I had seen at that point of time. I had seen a lot of runouts after that, Pontings, A.B. de Villiers, and a lot of other cricketers have done better runouts also. But this was, for an youngster watching that, it was great.
Yeah, fantastic fielding, and he had such a reach because he was so tall that he could pick the ball up and fire it. It was amazing how quickly he reached down. Yeah,
exactly. And that 80s team had an amazing fielding capacity, man. That West Indies team.
Yeah, I mean, even a guy like Joel Garner was terrific at the gully, right? But I think overall, if you look at the fast bowlers around the world, I think it's hard to find that many exceptional fielders. You'd find good ones, solid ones, but even someone like Bumrah is probably among the weaker fielders in the Indian team.
Yep, Sriram.
Okay. So my last moment is my 81 all-out moment before 81 all-out happened. So this is a random India versus Sri Lanka game in a one-day year in 93 or 94, 93 probably. So this was a 3-game series, and India had gone to Sri Lanka, and India were coasting. So I think Sri Lanka had said something like 204 or 205 for India to win. And I was watching this at a neighbor's place, so we didn't have cable TV at that time. And India were at 150 odd for 2, right? And Azhar and Prabhakar were batting, and it was all going very smoothly. There was a drinks break, and right after the drinks break, Azhar hit I forget the bowler, but he hit him to mid-on, right? And he was caught. And then it was in the evening. This was a day and night game, so this was in the evening. And then I went back home and listened to the rest of the game on All India Radio. and it was just complete chaos from there. So we just needed, I think, probably 50 odd runs. And given that it was a drinks break, we probably had, I don't know, 10-15 overs. So there was like really no way that India should have lost that match. And it was so chaotic that, okay, in All India Radio those days, basically there was this news from 8 to 8:05, and then there was sports news from 8:05 to 8:10. And from memory, what happened was, the sports news, they gave a score update. And before the sports news ended, there was another update that a wicket had fallen or something like that, right? It was one of those just absolutely manic collapses. And I started watching cricket around 92. And and we had lost close games before, right? So to Australia and to England in the World Cup and so on. But I think this was the first time I'd ever felt the pain of, India just bossing the game. You're like 50 runs with 8 wickets in hand, and you still have Sachin and all kinds of batsmen, Amre and Kapil Dev and so on to bat. And you somehow still end up losing, and I just could not fathom it. And, I think the first memory of me crying, after a game. So when I saw this, after the World Cup, this recent semi-final, they showed a kid sort of crying on TV. That's when I was sort of reminded of this game. I can never forget this. It's a completely random game. I don't know if anybody else remembers this game. Probably not. But I guess kids get hit very viscerally by these kinds of, shambolic collapses. And I always wonder, when match fixing happened, I was 15, right? And so I guess even that was hard. But what about a 10-year-old kid when match fixing happened, right? It must have been like crazy, I think, to see all of these people sort of go down in that way. But anyway, that game is something that sticks in my mind, although it's a completely sort of meaningless match in the larger context. Just can never get over it.
Which year was this again?
I think it was 93 August or July or something like that. Yeah.
Oh, this was when India were in Sri Lanka, is it?
Yeah, this was when India were in Sri Lanka. So
okay. I think Sri Lanka won that one-day series. So it must have been...
Yeah.
Was this a day-night game?
This was the day-night game.
When Ruan Kalpage basically bowled well and all that, I think.
Yeah, I think so. So
okay. I remember this game. Yeah.
So something similar about, knowing something from news or whatever. I mean, slightly going on a tangent. But you guys remember the India-New Zealand series from 96 or 97 when Robin Singh Jr. was supposed to make his debut?
Yes.
And the first match is called off. I think we played only one test when Simon Dool runs through us, right? On the first day of the match.
Yeah. Wellington.
So the match, but the first match is fully rained off. And we all got up to watch the match and we were disappointed that there's no match. But we kind of still, we're watching something and we're chatting and passing our time. And I think there was a Sun News in the morning at 8, Sun TV News at 8 or 8:30 or whatever. And they were showing some old one-day match highlights. I don't know if it was a highlights or a replay. Probably they were replaying the whole one-day match. So Sun News actually read out the score as 228 for 7. India batted first and India are, 228 for 7 in their first innings of that test. So the guys in the news section didn't even know that there is a colored clothing match going on. Even if, assuming, let's say, they didn't know that the play was called off for that day. Even if they had seen the TV and they had seen the score, they were not able to distinguish between a test and a one day.
I don't remember any of this. Obviously, I don't remember this.
I don't expect any of you to have followed Sun News on that day. We were just, scrolling the channel and I found it, and we found it extremely funny.
This is as random gets, but you remember it. So,
Sidney, moving on.
My next one is about. I'll go with the India's tour to England in 1996. I didn't watch this game. They probably showed it because back then they used to show even the tour games that India played. But this was India versus Derbyshire. This was before the second test, the tour game before the Lord's Test, and India lost that game to Derbyshire. I mean, they collapsed to Devin Malcolm and their bowlers, and I think even De Freitas was in that team. Yeah, and they collapsed to them. And Derbyshire needed 13 runs to win in the final innings. And this Dean Jones, who was captaining them, basically decided to humiliate India that little bit more. And he sent Devin Malcolm to open the batting along with the regular opener. And Malcolm came out and he hit 3-4s, stayed there for a few minutes, hit 3-4s and won them the game. And somehow, as far as the reports went after that, I read the Hindu reports and all that, the fact that that the number 11 batsman came out to hit the winning runs pissed off the Indians more than anything else in that match. And I'm like, dudes, you've just lost a tour game to a county side. Surely you should be pissed off anyway. But like Azhar and Sandeep Patel, everyone else was like, this is just humiliation. We cannot accept this. We cannot take this. I'm like, okay, but and and Dean Jones, I think said that we didn't want India to regain the confidence, as if he had some major incentive in this whole thing. I mean, it was ironical. He's an Australian playing in county. You would think that as an Aussie, he would want India to do well against England, but he went the other way. He said we wanted to make sure India's confidence is down and all that. So anyway, so that happened. But of course, that match is really important in many ways because Ganguly scored in that match. He scored 50 in the second innings, which helped him get selected for the next test. And then because Manjrekar got injured, Dravid got selected. So this was the game that probably helped. That this was the game that brought on the debuts for Ganguly and Dravid.
So had Ganguly not scored in this game and Manjrekar being injured, do you think they would have gone ahead with Ganguly and not Dravid if only one of them had to make the debut?
I don't know if they would have done it if he hadn't scored in this game. But in my feeling, Ganguly was always the one ahead of Dravid because he had already played for India, right? So there seemed to be a certain preference for him compared to Dravid. I mean, Dravid was always seen as the second sort of backup, and many people, in fact, said that he wouldn't get a chance on the England tour. This was just like for him to get used to the team and the dressing room and all that. So I think they would have gone with Ganguly anyway.
And the bowling was also an option. Ganguly's bowling was also.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And Dravid at that time had a horrendous start to his one-day career also.
Yes, with the famous moustache in Singapore.
And quite a few, not just even the England. I think we played a one-day series before the Test series, and even in that one-day series, he struggled a bit.
Yeah. I think, and in fact, Ganguly might have done okay in one game in that one-day series actually. So maybe that too pushed his favor.
We should ask Karthikeya to apply a detailed analysis on this and evaluate the probability of Ganguly never actually making his Test debut, if not for this one match.
We should ask him. We should ask him on the next podcast, actually.
Yeah. Do you remember Iqbal Siddiqui opening against England to score that 5 runs? Was it Mumbai Test?
Mohali.
Was that a revenge to this Dean Jones decision?
It may well have been, for all you know. And if I'm not wrong, that was the last time Iqbal Siddiqui played for India.
Only time,
yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. I'll close it off with one odd one from the India tour of Australia in '99. This was the Adelaide Test where Tendulkar and Ganguly were having a bit of a partnership, and Ganguly plays a square drive, and Blewett at point dives and takes a catch, and for some reason he immediately says no, it is not a clean catch, so he disowns it immediately. And on replay, when they showed it, they find that actually he took a clean catch. It's just that his hands first went underneath and it kind of scratched the surface before it came up. So it was a clean catch, but he didn't feel it was a clean catch, which is very funny. One it was a fairly innocent time when you could just think that it was a silly mistake from a fielder. But subsequently, the way Ricky Ponting went about taking the fielder's word because the TV doesn't have the third dimension and all that is a little ridiculous for not what Clark did to Ganguly in the Sydney Test, which is okay. But you also could potentially have a scenario where the fielder really doesn't know whether he's caught it or not.
So on a tangential note, I don't know if you guys remember this. Gilchrist once walked off and the ball went to slip or something like that, right? Where he hadn't hit it and it hit some crack. This was in England. I don't know. Was it in some ODI series in the 2005 time frame? It hit some crack or something and it went to slip and he just walked off. And actually he hadn't hit the ball at all.
Wow, that's like giving. Maybe you wanted to be in the company of Mongia. So let me also do it.
Was this after?
Anyway, I use a yellow helmet anyway.
Was this after the famous World Cup 2003 World Cup walk or before?
I think it was after. I don't know. I don't have a very clear memory, but I remember watching this around the 2005 time frame. But I don't know which match this was.
Wow.
I mean, Kohli walked in a World Cup match, no?
Against Pakistan,
Yeah.
Well,
So,
but at least there you could. I mean, they were saying that the bat makes a certain sound because of the way the handle is attached to the bat. So that is understandable. But in this case, if it's just hit a crack and gone to the slips,
that's strange.
you would know. So, but I think to just finally wrap up with Blewett, one memory which all of us will remember and many listeners too is that time when Blewett and Ganguly got out 99 and probably 5 minutes apart, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Continents apart, but 5 minutes apart.
All right, that was a lot of fun for us. I don't know how it's going to be for you. Hope you enjoyed the episode, and if you like it, and if you have such memories, please share it with us on the comment section of our website, or probably you can tweet us, you can text us, or record audio and share it with us. We're looking forward to hearing more of such experiences from you. We have so many others to add on, but we can't keep going on. But please share your memories and keep listening to 81 All Out. Thanks a lot.
So that brings us to the end of another episode of the 81 All Out podcast. Please subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever else you prefer. It would be wonderful if we could leave a rating and a review so that more people find us. You can also follow us on Twitter at 81 All Out and check out all our previous podcasts and articles on our website, 81allout.com. In case you're still listening, here's a shout out to our sister podcast on regional movies, whereistheotherbanana.com. You can follow them on Twitter at theotherbanana and watch out for updates on all the movie reviews and discussions that they put out. As always, we would love to hear your thoughts on the work we do, so please send us your feedback. Goodbye.
In the air, Sriram takes it. India win.
He'll come back for the second. India have won the test match. India have won the series.
They're going to get back for two. India at home. Lords goes wide.